All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, I want to let everyone know that we are recording this event. All right. So welcome to USG's second annual First Generation Student Celebration. Woohoo! Thank you all so much for being here. This event is brought to you by the Center for Student Engagement and Financial Resources, ACES, Achieving Collegiate Excellence and Success, and the Trailblazers, a first-gen student organization here on campus. My name is Iris Showerman, and I am the coordinator in the Center for Student Engagement and Financial Resources. As a first-generation student myself, being the first and only person in my whole family, actually, to attend college and graduate with a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree, I know firsthand the obstacles that first-generation students face and how important it is we provide them with the support and resources to succeed. Today, you will hear stories of first-generation students and professionals' road to success. This event will also be moderated by one of our very own USG first-gen students, Meredith Cordero. We're going to get started with a Mentimeter poll and encourage everyone to participate. You can do this on your phone or your computer. Please go to menti.com, we'll put this on the chat as well, and enter the code on the top of this screen. Okay? So as you can see, the code is 1503551. So go to menti.com and enter that code. So the first question is, were you a first generation college student? Okay, so far the majority are by far saying yes, you were or are a first generation student. We have some no, we have some I'm not sure, okay? Okay, so the next question is, what do you think of when you hear the phrase first generation student? Okay, so immigrant, okay. And this one actually, we hear a lot in confusion with what a first generation student is. But okay, good. Older sibling, underserved community, first for degree, yeah, first in the family to complete your college education, great. So we have, yeah, so a lot of things come to mind, right? And so I think that's really important, and you'll see throughout the stories that the panelists will share today and students about how being first generation can mean so many things to students. So, alrighty, thank you so much for participating in this. So this year, I am the advisor for the Trailblazers, USG's first generation student organization. The Trailblazers' goal this year is to build community among first generation students by providing support to one another, especially through our current virtual reality. I'm really excited to present Meredith Cordero, a second-year member and president of this organization. Please welcome Meredith. You can.
Thank you so much, Iris, for your introduction. Hi, my name is Meredith, and I am a senior majoring in biological science. My dad brought me to the US when I was 10 years old, and I began 6th grade here. I learned English while I was in ESOL 1 and skipped to level 3 by 7th grade. I was placed in a regular English course by 8th grade and became more confident with the language. I graduated from Northwood High School in 2016, where I was part of a college access program called ACES, and attended Montgomery College to pursue a biological science associate degree. I would like to become a dentist one day and help out the poor communities all over the world. I'm currently part of the Student Council as a UMD representative and a mentor in the Peer Mentor Mentee Club for the juniors in the BioSci program at USG. I work at an orthodontist's office as a part-time job and enjoy learning about dentistry and helping patients with their braces. I enjoy dancing, singing, and spending time with the people that I care about. And I also have 3 pets and take care of them daily while still managing schoolwork. I look forward to what this semester has coming up and what the Trailblazer has in store for us. I was a junior in high school, and my ACES coach and I were going over the list of colleges I had applied for. He looked at me and said, "You could go to college for free, you know." He then proceeded to tell me that I could attend Montgomery College, apply to the Board of Trustees scholarship, which thankfully I got, and then transfer to another school. From that point, I knew college was a possibility for me, and it took someone to care enough to tell me how I could do that while at the same time avoid any debt. As a first generation student and Trailblazer president, I am proud to moderate today's panel. Today's event will have 3 panelists who are all alumni of programs at USG. We have Savannah Aguiman, a recent USG graduate who majored in physiology and neurobiology. Melkin Ramos, who has a master's degree in organizational leadership and learning from the George Washington University and a bachelor's degree in criminology and criminal justice from UMD. And last but not least, we have Cristina De Lucia, who graduated with a psychology degree from the University of Maryland in Baltimore County at USG and received a master's of arts in clinical psychology from the University of Central Florida. This panel will be very interactive as we'd like to know more about the students' experiences and answer any questions you may have. To start, we'll be having a Kahoot quiz game that will be played by both panelists and students. It's a mini quiz that will test your knowledge of the first generation experience. Please take out your phones and copy the link that's shown in the chat. And it will provide you also with a code and also add your name to the website in order to start the game.
Okay. So just 5 more seconds for any last people that are joining in. All right, we're gonna get started. Okay. So the first question is, which of the following famous people was a first generation student? Okay, so the correct answer is actually all of them. So if you clicked on any of them, you got it correct. So all of them were first generation students. All right, so the next question, we have Alyssa, by the way, in first place so far. The next question is, what is the main reason generation students leave college, the number 1 reason? Okay, so the correct answer is couldn't afford to continue going to school, which is why it's so important that first generation students are given the opportunities and the accessibility to scholarships, financial aid, and USG does an amazing job with this. So if any first generation students need help with this, come and see us at the Center for Student Engagement and Financial Resources. All right, so we have Alyssa still in the first place, but we have a few people that moved up and some that moved down. The next question is, what is the percentage of first generation students that are enrolled in full-time in college? All right, 5 more seconds. And the correct answer is 48%, so about half of the students. And we know that first generation students have a lot of other things that they're doing as well besides school. Very busy students. Okay, so Alyssa, still in first place. All right. The next question is, what percentage of first generation students completed an advanced level math course such as calculus? Okay, so the correct answer is 6%. That's a low percentage, right? So again, it's so important that we provide first-gen students with the resources to succeed in STEM courses, including math classes such as calculus. Okay. The next, ooh, look at that. Vanessa, you moved up to first place. Alyssa, you moved down to third. And Sarah, you're second. Okay, next question is, what percentage of first generation students are 30 years old or older? Okay, so the correct answer is 28%. We at USG, our average age is already a little bit older, so we definitely work with these students. Okay, so Vanessa, you're on top right now. Alyssa, you moved up to number second. All right, so the next question is, what percentage of first generation students identify as a minority, including Hispanic, Black, Native American, and Asian? Okay, so the correct answer is 54%. So the majority identify as minorities. And Vanessa, you're still number one. Alyssa, you're number two. We only have two more questions left. So what is the median parental household income among dependent first generation students? Okay, so the correct answer is $41,000. As you can imagine, that's not a lot of money. So again, the financial piece is so important for first generation students. Okay, so Vanessa, you're still number one. Alyssa, you're number two. And the final question, what percentage of first generation students attend community college? And the correct answer is 50%. And as you all may, probably know, the majority of the students that we have at USG are also from community college. So we have that in common. That's the student population that we work with. Okay, so here are the results. So, okay, numbers, third place was Lissa, second place was Alyssa, and first place, Vanessa. Congratulations. Please, Shelby, follow up with Shelby on the chat, and she will let you know what you need to do to make sure you claim your prize. Thank you all so much for playing. We love first generation students and truly believe that it's super important that we work with you all to make sure that everybody succeeds in their academic career. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Iris, for playing that game with us, and thank you to everybody who's participated. I'd like now to ask the panelists to share their 90-second elevator speech that shares a little bit about their career path and experience as first-generation students. Do we have a volunteer? Savannah, Christina, or Melkin?
Okay, I will go. My name is Savannah Ajman. I was born and raised in Ghana. My parents came here and came here, and I was at the age of 12. I also came to join my parents at the age of 12. Right now, I graduated last year. I was part of the biological science program. I graduated my bachelor's in physiology and neurobiology. And right now I am a postbac researcher at NIDA, which is the National Institute on Drug Abuse. I went to John F. Kennedy High School, and my future job or career aspiration is to be a doctor. I don't know what specific field I want to go into yet, but I'm pretty sure when I get there, I will know. I went to Montgomery College after high school. I was fortunate enough to be able to receive the Board of Trustees scholarship, which was for 1 year, but if you do maintain a grade point average of 3.5 and above, you can renew it for the next year. So I was able to renew it. That was able to cover my tuition for my 2 years, and I received my associates in science at Montgomery College. I then transferred to University of Maryland, College Park at the Shady Grove campus. I was a biological science major, which I graduated from last year. And so far, USG has been a great part of my journey. I worked with I was part of the student ambassadors. I was also work with the Korean Internship Services Center, and I've gotten to know a lot of people. And I'm just here if you have any questions about my journey. I was able to graduate debt free. So if you have any question about my scholarships, how I was able to get that, also as a biological science major, how I was able to also go through that as well. And post grad life right now, I'm willing to also answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Savannah, for that. We'll now go to Christina.
Hello, my name is Christina DeLucia. So I'm a first generation student. Both of my parents they barely completed high school. So they didn't know much about the application process. So I had a very non-linear path to my doctorate degree that I'm getting right now. I graduated from John F. Kennedy High School as well, but a very long time ago. And after that, I went to Montgomery College for a couple of semesters, and then I did online courses for a while. I transferred around a lot because I was just indecisive during those times. And then I settled down at USG, and that was a wonderful experience for me. I did get scholarships along the way, but unfortunately I am not debt free. And then after I graduated, I moved down to University of Central Florida, and I got a master's in clinical psychology. And then after I graduated there, I worked for 2 years in the field doing clinical research trials for Alzheimer's. And then I went back to school for my doctorate, where I'm currently in Massachusetts obtaining a clinical neuropsychology PsyD degree.
Thank you so much, Christina. All right, we will go to Melkin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melkin Ramos. I'm originally from Maryland, but I've been living in Chile for a little over the past 2 years. I'm the first in my family to attend college. I went to Richmond Montgomery in Maryland, then went to Montgomery College for a couple of years, and then I ended up graduating from the Criminology and Criminal Justice program from UMD at USG. That's where I started getting a little more active on campus because I wasn't really active at MC. I also, unfortunately, didn't graduate without debt, but at least I was able to get some scholarships throughout the way. So it did limit the cost to attend college. From there, I ended up working I worked in a lot of different areas, to be honest. I've worked in retail, I've worked at theme parks, I've worked in the government. I worked in education. And I honestly think that my experience as a first generation student has directly impacted that experience because I've been able to adapt to a lot of new settings and being able to challenge myself in that. So I've been working in education for the past 5 years. I work in education abroad. So I help students go into either interning or working or doing faculty-led programs around the world. Of course, because of COVID right now, nobody can travel, but we've pivoted into virtual programs. So being able to connect students from all over the globe has been sort of my highlight this year. And yeah, I look forward to chatting with you all during this conversation.
Thank you very much, Melkin, for sharing that with us and to all the panelists. All right, we are now going to ask the panelists about their transition from high school to college and the adults who supported them. The first question being is, how did you know you wanted to go to college, and what was the college application or transition process like for you? And I will go ahead and start with Savannah.
Yes. So for me growing up, college was not even like a second guess in my household. You can't be like, maybe I want to go to college. It was something my parents were very strict about. So I just didn't have any doubt of me not going to college. It was kind of like a rule that you just had to go to college, for some, as immigrants, the main reason why my parents came is to make sure that I get the education that they didn't get. So for them, me going to college was extremely important to them, and so was it for me. So from in high school, as I think one person said, for me in high school, I had just transitioned. I came to America around I came to middle school, and then right then I just went straight to high school. So the transition adaptation was kind of really hard for me. And my parents didn't really know much about the system. And so I was kind of lost in the sauce where I just had to figure things out on my own. I missed out on so many opportunities because I just didn't know. But people that really did help me were my counselors. I became best friends with my teachers and my counselors. I was always in their room at lunch, office hours, asking questions, English not being my first language. So I was always kind of a little bit slow in class a little bit. So I would just use those office hours so much. And I remember my senior year transferring. My senior year, I applied to a lot of colleges. Unfortunately, I'm not a good test taker, so I didn't do so well on my SAT. First, I just was fresh off the boat, kind of just came to America. So I didn't really know much about it. So I kind of did really bad on my SAT twice. And so the schools that I applied to, including University of Maryland College Park, which I graduated from, did not accept me. And I was so hurt. I remember just crying in my direct advisor's office, my life is over. That was my dream school. And so I ended up having to, if I look at where I wanted to go, I was going to get a lot of debt. So my advisor was like, why don't you try Montgomery College? And I was a little reluctant, as a lot of people, for someone with a good GPA, a lot of people were expecting me to go to all these schools and stuff. So I was kind of in my mind, people were looking at me to go to big colleges. And I was like, you know what? I would apply to Montgomery College. And through that, I had my advisors help a lot. They were my backbone, because without them, I wouldn't even know of the Board of Trustees scholarship. In fact, it was my advisor that told me about the scholarship a day before it was due. So she was like, you know what, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna write this essay, we're gonna send it to them. And I was so glad I just listened to them. And also my parents were also a backbone. So the transition was hard, but I did get a lot of help from my advisors and my teachers and my parents, as much as they could help me out with that. So that was kind of how the transition went for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Savannah, with us. We will now be moving on to Christina.
So for me, the transition process was pretty difficult. My mom is a single mother, and so she also never applied to college, anything like that. So she couldn't really help me out in the process, but college was always something that I wanted to go on to. I never doubted that I wanted to obtain a higher education. It's always been a goal of mine. And so I, like Savannah, also was always in the guidance counselor's office, like talking to my counselor, talking to the career services. And I was part of a group called Salto al Futuro, and it helps a lot for Hispanics trying to go on to college and stuff like that. And so I really dove into all the free resources that I could in order to get help. And that helps me in the application process, but it still was, finances were an issue. So I used the Common App when I applied so that I could apply to several colleges with only one fee. I don't know if they changed that now. And then I got into most of them, but I also didn't get into University of Maryland. And I was going to go out of state, but then I didn't feel like leaving my family behind. So I stayed in Maryland, and I did Towson for like barely a semester, and it was still too far from home. And so I ended up at MC. And it was a very nonlinear process. Like I was saying, I jumped around from college to college. I didn't feel like most of them were a good fit for me, or, there was a lot going on in my home life that a lot of times the reason why I would switch colleges was due to having to move back to help my family and things like that and have to work and provide. But yeah, it was all over the place, but I ended up where I am now. And it was definitely from the support of all the services at school. And then like my mom was very supportive emotionally and physically, even though she couldn't financially. And she just really was my support system and backbone as well, getting to where I am today. So.
That's amazing to hear, Christina. Thank you so much. Now, if Melkin, you would share some with us.
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to go to college since freshman year of high school that I can remember. And mainly because of my parents. My parents always said, you need to go to school, you need education. My parents are originally from El Salvador, and they didn't really get much education while they were there either. And that's a whole another conversation in terms of the education system in El Salvador, especially in rural El Salvador. And from there, I knew that I wanted to go to Maryland. So I think there's a trend among the panelists. So I applied for college during my senior year, of course. I only applied to 2 schools, which I don't recommend. And I didn't get into either of them. I applied to College Park and to UMBC. And then ultimately, I honestly waited until the last moment to apply for MC, because for me personally, I knew I always wanted to go to College Park, for example, and it was tough, even though my family and my friends hadn't gone through the process, and my friends weren't either decided not to go to school or they went into the workforce instead. At times it did feel lonely, but I think that's where you sort of rely on your family. That I knew, like Christina was saying, that that emotional support, that family support in terms of, I'm here for you. I don't know what you need from me, but I'm here to help you as much as I can. So from there, I ended up going to Montgomery College. I said I was going to stay there for a year, and then I realized how much money I was saving going to Montgomery College. And I said, let me just finish out my prereqs here at MC, and then from there decided to transition into USG. And that's when I found out about USG. I didn't even know USG existed. And I ended up applying for the scholarships I think it's called the USG scholarships. And I did that, and that's when I started getting a bit more active. I've always been somebody who was not super active in school. So high school, I went, did my thing. I worked part-time, hanging out with friends. And then by the time I was at UMD, at USG, there was a community that I felt that I actually could, have friends and engage. And that's when I started being more active with the student association, working in the community. And from there, that's when I decided this is what I kind of want to do for the rest of my life. So like I said, I majored in criminal justice, and I was working in the government. I was working in personnel security. And during my last year of college, I was a student ambassador. So I think that's how I stayed connected with USG still. And from there, I decided to sort of pivot into higher education. And I worked at GW for a bit in admissions. And that sort of led me to where I'm at right now. But yeah, just overall, I would say personally for me, it's been my parents. that have sort of been that backbone. And then I do have some friends who decided to return to college after going into the workforce a bit later. So they, even though it wasn't a similar experience, they did have, you know, the experience of being working professionals going back to undergrad, which is also a unique experience. So, you know, leaning on them definitely helped with that transition. But yeah, when I didn't get accepted into college the first time around, it definitely was a hit to my ego, to be honest. But then overall, I did realize that, I mean, it was the best decision just because personally, as we learned also, finances is such an important aspect of college. I ended up saving so much more doing that. And when I would see sometimes some students from, you know, state colleges, they would do their prereqs in the summer at Montgomery College. So I said, there's a value in this for sure. That, I mean, sometimes I don't think gets highlighted, but yeah, that's my story so far.
Thank you very much, Melkin, for sharing that with us. Since all of our panelists, I answered my second question, which was to who was their biggest supporter during their college experience. I'm now going to ask all of you to participate in this Mentimeter poll. And the question being is, who provided you with the most support for college? All right, I also want to ask, does anyone want to raise their hand or share a brief story about someone who supported you on your college journey? Or you could also have mention or bring it up on the chat.
Meredith, can I share?
Hello everyone, my name is Larissa Ketcha and I major also in biological sciences with the University of Maryland College Park at the universities at Shady Grove. The greatest supporter that I've had throughout my college career are my parents and also my peers as well. My parents and my peers, especially my parents. At first, it wasn't easy because I had to explain to them why I had to get involved in school, had to join extracurricular activities, why I had to apply for scholarships as well, because they thought they were going to cover all my tuition for me, but they never really knew how much or how expensive college actually is, especially as a science student. So they have been supporting me throughout from my freshman year, even from high school all the way to my college year. And I've actually gotten adapted to the whole system as well. Like they even ask me questions about my courses, about my exams, like they're really actually involved in my career. So per se, my parents, and they're very being helpful to me throughout my career, yeah.
Thank you so much, Larissa, for sharing that with us. I believe Christian also wanted to share.
Yeah, I want to share that my parents have been my biggest support. Like I think about them all the time, like when I'm going through my education, because like they've, you know, they crossed the border. They came here, they had absolutely nothing. They worked their butt off to have what they have today. And you know, that's something that I admire from them. And hopefully I can have my own, you know, company one day too.
Thank you so much, Christian, for sharing that with us as well.
Marianelli has her hand raised.
Oh, yes, Marianelli, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Marianelli. I am a current USG student studying communication with the University of Maryland College Park. And I was, you know, I guess a bit stuck when it came to like the polls because I had various amounts of support, mainly from my family. And like Meredith, I came from Northwood High School, so Northwood represents. And we both had the same ACES coach. What I didn't realize at the time when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to go to high school, but the main concern that I definitely had was definitely trying to pay for college. So when my ACES coach first came into a class that I had, which was called ADVID, they were kind of a sister company to ACES as well. And what he told us was that we should apply for the ACES program because we are a sister company to ACES, we would most likely be able to be with them and they could help us get through the college process. And that, to me, helped a lot. He was very, very attentive to what you know, my concerns were. And at first I was thinking of going to a four-year university, but ultimately they answered a little too late. So in the end, I ultimately decided to go to Montgomery College, and he said that would definitely be of help to me. And I was very glad that I did go to Montgomery College, because I was able to leave without any debt. So that made me feel so proud of myself, even though at first I kind of really hated myself within for going to Montgomery College. But thanks to him and the ACES program, and along with the support of my family, I was able to get through Montgomery College just fine. And also with the help of people here at USG, they were also my backbone as well, because they all were just rooting for me and making sure that I was going to be the first of my family to be able to get a degree, because my siblings couldn't do it before. So the pressure was on me. So, and now as a current senior, I am just so proud of myself that I'm almost there. And thanks to all of their help, it really made me get to the position I'm in today.
Thank you so much for sharing. I see that Cynthia has her hand raised, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, really quickly, my two, well, I have a big support system, and I thank God for that every day. But my two main people would be my ACES coach from high school and my mom. My mom is the type of person who would never judge me, and my dad, he was actually giving me a hard time when I decided to go to MC. But it was because he just didn't understand. And my mom has always been the one that to be like, it doesn't matter, like you're going to college, like that's what matters. And like whenever I get a B in the class, my dad is the one that gives me a hard time, and but my mom is there to reassure me that it's okay. And I think that my mom has definitely been the main source of my success, I guess, up until now. And Miss Kudiel, which is my ACES coach, well, which was my ACES coach. She's more of a friend now, but she is the best person that I have ever met in my entire life. And I am so thankful to have her in my life, even now that I'm at USG, because, and it makes me so emotional to think about it. Because like, she's just like there, you know, she always has the right thing to say, and they just hold such a special place in my heart. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for sharing that touching and moving story. And thank you to everybody who also participated with this question. We're now going to talk about the challenges you faced in college as first-gen students. So please, panelists, answer the following questions. What were the challenges you faced at school and at home during your college experience? I'm going to now call on Melkin, please, if you could share first.
Yeah, definitely. So one of my biggest challenges was, I think just a part of my personality, I tend to be a perfectionist. So I like everything to be perfect as much as possible. So being the first person in, my family to go to school, at times you do feel like all eyes are on you. You're supposed to be doing everything perfectly. You're the first one that's out there doing this for us, on our behalf. We weren't able to do it. So that at times did take a toll on me. So I tried to dedicate as much as I could to school, which unfortunately I do come from a Latino family, so we're very close knit. So that would take away time from my family. It would take time from, going to my cousin's birthday party or, going to a friend's celebration. But fortunately they understood that. But I think a lot of times, I think that goes back to that feeling of, you don't always feel like you have somebody you can, or people that you can, rely on during the process. But the great thing about that also was being able to engage with, my classmates. So that's where I decided to, and I had to also put myself out there a bit more. I'm more of an introvert. So I like to, get more, one-on-one conversations. I really want to get to know you. I don't want to get to know you on a superficial level if we're gonna have a conversation. But I think one of the things for me, that's something that was a challenge too, was putting myself out there, you know, challenging myself, putting myself in positions where I had to network, I had to engage with either the student body, or if I had to do it outside of school, also doing networking while I was at work. That was some of the challenges. Another thing was the finances. So I actually, like I mentioned, I went to MC for the first few semesters. And after my first semester at MC, I didn't do so great. And on top of that, the finances weren't that great either. And I almost dropped out of school my first semester. And just because the idea of getting thousands of dollars of loans scared me. And I knew that I didn't want to have that for me for, you know, 50, 60 years in some cases. So I decided to like really push myself to try to see how I could finance school. So what I was doing was I started applying for scholarships. That's when I started actually doing my research. I think I was a late bloomer when it came to doing my research for college. It all worked out in the end, but it definitely did take some more time for me to do. But ultimately, I was able to apply for scholarships. I learned about scholarships that are geared towards first generation students, for students of color. And I think a lot of times, those are things that we don't oftentimes look at, or sometimes counselors don't really highlight. So I think this is where it's important to develop a relationship with your counselors, with your teachers, with your faculty members, because they do end up being champions for you and advocates when they notice that you know, you have this desire to do that, desire to go to college. But I would say those three things were probably the highest, the most challenging for me. And I do encourage all of you all to always apply for scholarships, even if you don't think you're going to end up getting it. It does take some time, but it definitely is worth it, because you'll probably be surprised with what the outcome would be.
That's right. Thank you, Melkin, for sharing that. We will now be asking a question for Christina.
So I have a similar story as well. I guess it was very challenging for me because I was also a perfectionist, and like the transition from high school to college, there's like a different level of you know, you have to like it's funny because like in high school I didn't study, and then I got good grades, but then in college I had to like rework that in order to get the grades that I wanted and things like that. So it was very challenging in that regard, but it was also because I'm also more of an introvert, and I realized that I really had to put myself out there in order to network and like make friends and like establish a community at school in order to help me make it through and be able to understand how to make it through, since my mom wasn't versed in the experience. Finances were also a huge issue. I had to work any hours that I could, all hours of the day, whatever I could get, just so I could afford books, and so that I could afford gas to even go to school. And then I had to like schedule it around when my mom would let me use her car. So it was just such a challenge, like in that regard. But one thing that really helped me is when I went to USG, I applied for every and any scholarship that they offered, as well as like Googled scholarships, and just talked around with other people who were applying to scholarships. And I don't exactly remember how, but I stumbled upon the McNair Scholars Program, and I applied for that, which is a very tedious and arduous process. It's very much like applying for a doctorate program, and how you're interviewed by a group and you have to have recommendations and things like that. But that actually is probably the biggest program that helped me face all of those challenges and overcome them, because they also provided not only support in every aspect of the word, but if you needed to go to interviews and you couldn't afford it, they would pay for it, things like that. And so that really helped me, and it took a weight off my mom's shoulders once she realized I got into the program. And she was just so grateful that I had that resource and even outlet, because, you know, it was like-minded people with with experiences that were similar. And so I would say that all the challenges that I did have, I was able to persevere and overcome because I just kept advocating for myself. I kept putting myself out there and networking, and I kept applying. Even if I would get rejected for scholarships, I just kept like over applying so that something would give. And at the end of the day, it did. So.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Christina. And we'll now move on to Savannah.
Hi. So for me in school, I would say that I just had this thing of where I felt like I was playing catch up because of how, when I went to Montgomery College, for example, I scored like lower in science and math in my AccuPlacer. So it set me back behind. And so it was this mentality of me having to finish MC in 2 years. I'm not staying here any longer, you know, otherwise I'm gonna lose my scholarship. So I remember my freshman year, I was taking 7 classes and working part-time. So I experienced a huge burnout. This is me coming from high school, taking all these classes and working part-time. I thought I was superwoman, but I felt the burnout so quick in the beginning. And then I had to kind of like back down and say, like, you can't kill yourself when you just started college. And so for me, that playing catch up, I remember I had to there was summer breaks. There was no summer breaks for me or winter break for me, because it was in my head that I had to finish in 2 years. So I was always like taking summer classes, taking winter classes. I basically didn't have a break in those during those times. But I'm glad that I was able to, you know, overcome those. And like my biggest challenge also was just finding out how I study or how to study. Because like for me, I was always trying to figure out, wait, does this help? Does that help? You can't, it's like that kind of like, it's never ending, I feel like. And I thank God for Miss Annie, because I remember meeting with her. She goes, preview and review. That was one of the biggest things she would always tell me. And I would shout out Miss Annie in the hallway, preview and review. Like that's what we always do. And basically showing me how I could study, like figuring out how I could study and actually retain information was the hardest thing for me. Because if you are in a biological science program, especially in science, there's just so much information, and how do you get around it? That was my biggest struggle in college, just finding out how I studied or what good way it was for me to study. Being part of GSS helped me a lot. Also being an extrovert, I was just out there, you know, with everybody. The good thing about having a cohort at USG for me was that you stay with the same professors, you stay with the same group of people you graduate with. So you build a niche. That was really helpful, building a niche, staying in the library till 2 a.m., going home. And that's when you come and meet your parents, like, why are you coming back so late? So at home, my parents just didn't understand the fact that I'm spending so much time in school. They sometimes even believed me that I was staying in school till 2 a.m. You know, that was one of the things, like, as a commuter, I faced that because I didn't live on campus. My parents expected me to always be at home on time, kind of like, they just don't get the fact that you are busy when you're at home. That was one of the things that I was like, you know, Mom, I'm doing homework. It's like, well, you have to take care of the house too and everything. So in that aspect, I remember wishing that I was even on campus sometimes. I felt like I was missing out for some reason. Like, you know, my friends are like that on campus are like, oh, we're going here, we're doing that. It's so fun on campus. And I was like, well, am I missing out? But then after I graduated and I look back at all the things and I look at the degree that people paid so much for, that, like, you know, it was like, I had to kind of like weigh the fun versus the outcomes. I'm like, I got this for so less than I would have if I had sacrificed so the sacrifices I made were basically important to me. So did I miss out? Maybe, but I don't feel like I missed out on the college dream, because I was part of the ambassador. I was part of International Night. I was dancing, representing Ghana. Iris, you know that, like, I was just like having the best time of my life at USG, just being part of so many other things. And it made me gain like really good relationships with not just my peers, but professors and also the staff that I cherish so much. So that is very important to me as well.
Thank you so much, Savannah, for sharing that with us. All right, I've asked a couple of questions now, but now I would like to ask questions to our audience. And the question being, what questions do you guys have for our panelists about their college experience? I see a raised hand for a while now. I believe Brian Mustafa, we have a question.
Hi, I wanted to ask, how did all of you kind of plan out your career and kind of think about how you're going to approach your last semester at USG and use USG's like career center for I think it's the career success services center to help you prepare for or look for kind of like a pipeline into a career, like into like your position right now, or just even, you know, how did you approach that process really?
I could jump right in.
That question, Brian. Oh, thank you, Milking.
Yeah, cool. So what I ended up starting to do towards my last year, I started going to the Career Center and asking for help on my resume. And then also on some writing skills as well for my cover letter. That's probably the main resources that I used. What I ended up starting to do as well, which I also recommend, is even if you're working part-time somewhere else, that you ask them for their advice, because they're working professionals also. So they went through that process of going from college into their career. And or if you're doing an internship, which I definitely recommend during your college experience, which I didn't learn about until I was in college. But super important to be able to be in those experiences in terms of internships as well, to get some work experience that sometimes they require afterwards. I don't always think jobs announce or do requirements as they should. They sometimes do ask a little bit for too much experience for entry-level positions, which isn't always good. But I think if you're leaning on USG, for example, that definitely helped me out. I had gotten some help for my resume outside of USG, but I felt like having somebody who, you know, was more dedicated to, you know, doing that. They had seen so many other examples, and they probably knew others who ended up going into that career after USG, that they would probably be the best suited ones to give me some advice on that. And then in addition to that, I worked with my program director, and it's Dr. Wendy Stickwin. I believe she's still there. And she also started helping me out in terms of my resume, you know, what type of experience I wanted to get into afterwards. So those at USG were probably the main resources that I used.
Elizabeth has a question. So how long does it take you to get a job in the career you majored in?
Okay, I had a little question, so I'll answer like kind of two ways. So for Brian, I actually work at CISC. I was also a student worker. So that's how I actually found my first recent job at Walter Reed. And so I encourage you to use that resources. So for me, you know, when you're like a senior, that's when things start to hit differently. You're like, oh, I have to get my life together. I'm about to graduate. The whole thing of what am I going to do? That kind of like, I tried to plan ahead. For me, I was able to get a job that was also through CISC. I got an interview for an oncology research, but unfortunately I had to go to Connecticut for a program. But when I came back, the position had already left. They had given the position to someone else because they wanted someone that was going to stay with them kind of long term. So I went through, I don't know, I'm not trying to scare you, but I went through a process of post-grad depression. I was really having it because I felt like I had my life together. I was going to graduate, my job is set, and then all of a sudden, boom, everything is like gone. And so for me, trying to figure out what to do next was the harder thing for me. And having friends that were with me, the reason why I even get my NIH position right now was because I had a friend who had already gotten into NIH. So it was like, oh, I'm looking for jobs. My job was just taken away from me. Basically, do you have any recommendations? And can you ask in your lab with somebody for me? And she's like, yeah, I'll vouch for you. And that's how I even got the job that I am doing right now. So, but, just make sure, use the CISC resources, use your peers that maybe are in positions that you want. Also ask your directors, your advisors, because I know my teacher, who is also my advisor, did work at NIH. So he's the one that wrote my recommendation letter for me. And so, it was like so important that I asked around. Don't be scared to ask around. Anybody can help you. So that was just my little advice.
Can I just add something really quickly, because I think it fits in well with what Savannah's mentioning. So while I was in undergrad, I was working for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services through the Pathways program, which is something that I highly recommend that you look into. So I was able to work part-time during my entire time I was studying. And then during the summer and then winter breaks, I worked full-time. And the Pathways program afterwards, after I graduated, they ended up offering me a full-time job. So I technically was in the field already, and then I just ended up securing a full-time job afterwards. So that's another recommendation. The Pathways program is not only with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, they also are, for example, with NIH, they're with the U.S. Department of Justice. So I would definitely recommend looking into that, because it's tailored for undergraduate students at community and at state colleges. But then also, if you end up going into a master's program, they help through that process as well.
And I just wanted to quickly add as well. So for me, I was applying 6 months before I even graduated my master's program, and I was networking through my internships that I held throughout my master's program and through my professors in order to secure a job before I graduated. So I was able to secure a job that way, and I started working as soon as I graduated because of that. But that took a lot of time and effort on my part to juggle a master's, as well as going out there for interviews and perfecting my CV and everything, or, if you guys use cover letters and resumes. And so just kind of, you have to network and get yourself out there and plan ahead, especially if you know the type of field that you want to go into. It's easier that way because, you're still fresh out of the program, or you're about to graduate. And so they're looking for new graduates a lot of the time because you're on the up and up with all the latest technology or research in that field. So it's really good to get a head start on that.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Christina. I just wanted to add to that I haven't graduated college just yet, but as a senior at USG, I personally have found the opportunity to, like I mentioned earlier, work at an orthodontist office. And I think that's where networking really comes into play, because I just want to keep myself, on board, and keep in mind that, you don't know what may happen after graduate college, but it is good to keep in mind that you may have an opportunity that will present to you even before you graduate. So that's why it's good to get yourself out there and ask questions. And, even if you get rejected or put down once, don't be afraid to ask another way, because when one door closes, another one opens up. And through internships or just working at a part-time job, something that exposes you to your field or not, could get you an opportunity that you didn't expect to get. So I just wanted to add to that. But thank you to all the panelists to answer that question. And I believe Joy had another question as well. She's been having her hand raised up.
I know, right? You've been neglecting me. Thanks, Meredith. So I just wanted to first off, just thank all the panelists for being here. Just you guys sharing your stories, I felt like I could relate with every piece of it. And also for the audiences, even chipping in, I felt like I could really see myself, based on where you guys have been. So I just had a question for the panelists. Anyone could really answer, but I feel like some of you, or most of you, really talked about some of the setbacks that you've had, even based on your background, just different paths that you really took to get you to where you are. I know everyone is different. I know there are different difficulties that people face in life, where they feel like their circumstances kind of hinders their growth, or they feel like they can't do it, or they feel like, maybe, where they see themselves in the future based on their circumstances that they're having now or facing now. Like they can't do it. So like, what is an advice that you would give, college students, going through it, who really think that, based on where they're coming from, like they really can't, maybe dropping out is the best thing for them to do, or maybe like not moving forward to, work to help out in the family is like the best thing. Like, what is really like a really advice that you would, give to those who can't see themselves, reaching their full potential?
So for me, I surrounded myself with people that I wanted to be like. And so if I felt like I wanted to give up, or I had to go back home and take care of my family instead of continuing on with my education, I surrounded myself with an environment at USG especially, that it was like, if they can do it, I can do it. I mean, I was like best friends with a 50-year-old man who had like 3 children and would be in the library with me until like 1 in the morning. And his wife was always calling and things like that. And it was just like, man, if he can do it, I don't even have a kid or pets right now. Like, what excuse am I having? Like, I get that, like, there's a lot of things that are weighing on you as a first generation student, and there's a lot of setbacks, but my mom was like a huge support system. So when I would talk about wanting to drop out and this, that, and the other, she would talk about wanting to do extra things to make it so that I feel comfortable enough to, go for it and persevere and things like that. But my biggest thing is, behavior breeds behavior, and your environment really makes who you are. So I just really spent my time like around people that had done it, or people that wouldn't let me say no and like give up. And that's very important for me because I value other people that I respect. I value their opinion. And so that really helped me keep going.
Thank you so much, Christina, for answering the question. And thank you, Joy, for asking that to us as well and to the panelists. I will now be turning it over to Shelby, who will be announcing our first raffle winner.
Hey, thank you, Meredith. So a little bit after we began, I did a randomly picked students for both our first and second raffles. We'll be announcing the winner of our first raffle, and that is Cynthia Martina Lopez. So Cynthia will be reaching out to you in just a moment. Congratulations. Our next raffle will be near the end, so please hang out with us a little bit longer if you can. Back to you, Meredith.
Thank you so much, Shelby, and congrats, Cynthia. I will now ask questions to the panelists regarding their transition to the workforce as first-gen students. The first question being is, what strategies did you use to transition from college to the workforce, and what advice do you have for future graduates? We can start off maybe with Christina.
So for me, strategies that I used to transition were, I feel like a broken record, but it was really networking and helping other people get me in the door to where I needed to go. And so when like I said, I was applying 6 months in advance. I would give my CV and cover letter to anyone and everyone that, would help look at it and edit it for me. And I definitely tailored it to each job that I wanted to, apply for, because, they can really tell when you're not putting much effort into these parts of your application. So that was a huge thing. But yeah, there was a lot of similarities from like the degree that I had to the workforce that I was going into. So a lot of it was just making sure I kept in contact with the people that taught me all throughout my program, so that if I had any questions and I felt uncomfortable bringing them up in the workforce, I had them to serve as a bridge for me to get comfortable to, standing on my own, knowing that I'm confident in what I'm doing and I'm able. And so my advice is just don't burn bridges. You should just always keep in contact with everyone that's ever helped you along the way, and just make sure that you keep your CV updated, because you never know when you'll need it.
Thank you so much, Christina. That is right. Thank you for answering that question. And this next question will also be asked to any of the panelists who would feel free to share. Do you ever struggle from imposter syndrome or feeling like you don't belong or aren't good enough? And how did you deal with those feelings?
Yes, so imposter syndrome is something that I struggled with in college and still even in the workforce. Being at NIH, you are around people that are smart, you know, and sometimes it's just kind of like, you know, when I don't get something or when I'm kind of slow to get something, I kind of look at myself like, oh, is it me? Maybe I'm not just up to par. Like, you know, it's just so much negative talk. But also, I would say that being around people that feed negative energy into your life is so important. Also, I know people are maybe against it, but just seek counseling, therapy. If that helps you, honestly, your mental health takes you a long way, especially in this kind of like workforce. In imposter syndrome, for someone that struggled with it, even now, I became part of, even last week, I was part of the Building Resilient Scientists Facing Imposter Syndrome discussion, where I basically met with a bunch of postdocs that are also going through the same thing. The first time I realized that it's not everyone that's just like, you know, has it all figured out. I was mind blown. Like, it helped my confidence. I realized that some people are also going through the same thing. They share strategies. People said, writing like, you know, what is it called, diaries, or like, you know, writing out what you're thankful for every day. People say taking your resume and just listing the things you have done to see that you are also, you know, accomplished things, that helps them. People say also like, you know, talking to people about it, also finding people who have common things in common with you also helps. So, and also just looking at how far you've been, like, you know, the things that you thought you were not going to be able to accomplish, and look at where you are, and you're even going through that, should actually tell you that you're not just you know, nobody. You were able to, you know, accomplish so much, and you're still going to be accomplishing a lot. Just don't put that much pressure on yourself, and just be thankful for what you have now and what you are working towards. I think that helps me a lot, especially with where I am right now, in a whole lot of medical school application cycles, where it's this cycle is messed up for me with COVID and everything. Things not ending up what I want to do, but it's just been a lot of positive self-talk to myself, so I don't fall into the pit of, you know, just negative and depression and all those things. We don't want that. So I would say keep reaching out to people. Definitely, you are not alone. A lot of people face this. You are not alone. Reach out to somebody. That's so important. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Savannah, for sharing that with us. Well, now for the audience, it seems like many of us struggle with feelings like we aren't good enough, but that's wrong. Let's talk about what makes first-gen students so great. In the chat, share what strengths first-gen students bring to the table, and if you feel comfortable, please share your hand and share. I wanted to start off by sharing this from my end as well before we move on to students. I so agree with what Savannah brought up, which is, you know, having that confidence within yourself. And I also wanted to share that I've personally felt that who you surround yourself with, whether it's from when you start to from high school or middle school and so on, who you really surround yourself with will definitely impact the way you see yourself and the way you approach life in general, and whether it's in school and stuff. So to me, having my dad always encouraging me and having such a great friend who's always there for me and always adds on to my life rather than take away, that certainly helped keep my head grounded and know that things will work out. And it's just, and also up to God, you know, what God has in store for me. But I just wanted to share that with you all. But I see a lot of people sharing in the chat. Ambition, resilience, being fierce. Thank you, Joy. Perseverance. And you know, if anybody feels brave enough to unmute themselves, please, we're welcome to share what you guys have for us.
Yeah, I feel like as a student who's kind of been through 4 schools in the last 5 years, I felt that resilience is almost sort of an expectation when you can't afford to do it anymore, like when you can't afford to mess up at a job. Like I always felt that way about school, and I didn't really understand why people have a stereotype about college kids, you know, goofing around and getting like having a lot of like off, you know, just spring break and stuff. And I was definitely just not interested in kind of wasting that time when I'm not in class to try to like secure something for myself, because I feel, you know, it's like there's like a spot of insecurity where you don't know what will happen like a year or so, and you're in like, it's a lot, thousands of dollars you're investing into being there, and you don't have anyone else to, like your parents, I guess, or your, or like an alumni network, or like a fraternity or whatever, that kind of backs you up when you mess up. Like there's no safety net like that. So I've always felt like I never related to the entitlement that some people have about going to college. And I just felt like, well, you know what? When my time comes to shine at my job, I think I'll be able to um, face any turnovers or any changes in the company be more resilient that way, or just, you know, be more of a leader in that case, instead of kind of falling back onto people like who will have power, you know. Like I don't want to do that. Like in my head, I just don't feel comfortable like leaving my fate into into like people who are my boss, or who tell, like, you know, I know it's something you have to balance, but I don't like doing that. And I think that could be seen as like what's it called, the insubordination at a job, like if you don't do what your boss says in reality. But I think that I'm learning to kind of accept the professional world for what it is, because we're all there. I have to think of it's like a purposeful reason we're there. We're not just there to stay in the same position for the same and do the same job forever. Hopefully that's not the idea, right? Like the idea is that you grow in the position, you ask questions, you learn about the industry, and you seek out help. I used to feel very insecure about that I needed to seek out help from teachers or tutors, or in MC and in high school. I just thought that if I was taking the class and I had the textbook and I had the like Wiley Plus for math, and I had a calculator, I had the means to do it on my own, and that asking questions was sort of like showing that you can't do it on your own, and that you're not qualified enough, because you need to ask questions from someone who's probably better than you at statistics or biology or English literature, you know. So I feel like I got a wake up call about, no, when you need people like in your network to vouch for you for letters of recommendation, or or for your future to apply for programs, that's where you build, like that's why it matters. And it's also good to help other people who, you know, who took time to get to know you, and like, you know, give you constructive feedback about how you work. Because again, like I'm going to cut it short now, but I don't want to, I think that treating my GPA like it's a credit score, like I can't go below 3.5 or else I'm doomed and I'm screwed. um, it's not healthy, but it's what a lot of people end up doing, because the competition is really high for jobs. Like no one likes to admit it, no one's cutthroat that way. Like no one's going to, it's really rude, but it's also just like against human nature to like kind of act overtly aggressive if you're in school, because it's really not common. But I mean, even people who are developing a cure for the coronavirus, like biologists, are probably competing against each other around the world, and in Japan or in any like countries that develop medicine, like America as well. So I'm just saying that competition is good, but um, uh, only if it brings out the best in you, not if it meant to put other people down, right?
Yes, I agree. It's definitely agree, Brian. Thank you so much for sharing all those very great points. I will take another question. I see Christina's hand up, if you don't mind sharing with us.
It's more than a question. It's like a comment, basically. I just wanted to say that first generation students, and I say it not only for myself, but for friends that I've seen them, like we're really consistent in what we do, in the sense of, even though we struggle and we will fail multiple times, and we will like feel like we're never gonna finish, or like we're never gonna achieve our goals, we're still there, and we're still like trying, and we're still trying to do our best to like achieve our goals. And I feel like that's something that represents like first generation students.
I definitely agree. Thank you so much, Christina, for bringing that up. That's a strong statement. We do matter, and we will make it happen. I will now pass it over to Shelby for our final raffle drawing.
Thank you. So our final raffle winner for the afternoon is Manuel Peirano. Congratulations, Manuel. I will be messaging you in a moment to get your information, and I will pass it back over to Meredith.
Congratulations, Manuel. Thank you so much, Shelby. Now I'm going to ask the panelists what resources were helpful to them during their college career path. So the first question being, what resources were most beneficial for your success, and what would you recommend to others? I know some you guys applied to scholarships a few years back, but maybe mentioning them again, the scholarships may still be available now. Or I could call on. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, cool. All right, so of course, FAFSA, applying for FAFSA every January, that's a must. The USG scholarship, applying for that even while you're, transitioning from MC to USG. I'm gonna have to take a look again, and I'll send it over to Sarah sometime this weekend so she can forward the rest of them to you all. And some of the recommendations that I have are gonna be a lot of the things that Brian said, so I think Brian should have been on this panel. But one of the biggest things that I recommend doing is asking questions. I think asking endless questions that you have to your mentors, to your teachers about the application process. Even if you think that a question might sound dumb, or you don't think it's going to be the right question, go ahead and ask it anyways, because you'll probably be surprised with, that's going to lead to another question, and you'll learn about a new resource, or you'll learn about a new scholarship, or you'll learn about how you can fund a new opportunity. And another thing that I would recommend, and it's not only because I work in education abroad now, but is looking for resources that allow you to study abroad, to intern abroad. I didn't do that while I was in undergrad, and I didn't do that while I was in my master's degree either, but I ended up getting a job here in Chile. That's why I'm in South America now. And I think one of the things that I've learned about working in this field for the past few years is the transformative experiences that you have, not only in being able to live in a new country and, for the Instagram pictures and posting on your social media, but you also genuinely learn a lot of leadership skills. You learn how to communicate with people from different backgrounds. You'll learn about how you can also advocate for yourself, which is something that I strongly recommend, because when you're paying for college, you're not only paying for your classes. I think it's very easy to go to college and say, I'm going to go to my class and then I'm going to get my grades and I'll leave. But you're genuinely also paying for that experience. So you're paying to be able to talk to the career services. You're paying to get academic writing advice. You're paying for the time that you have with your faculty members. So those are a lot of the things that you have to do as well, that you have to take advantage of. And then the last thing that I have is finding mentors. I think that's something that I was late on doing, to be honest. And that's one of the things that I haven't been as consistent as I should be. And I'm, holding myself accountable to that, is that I think a lot of times we find it difficult, or we're scared to go and reach to somebody and say, hey, I don't have it all figured out. How did you get to where you are at, at this very moment? I want to get into a similar position in the future. And it doesn't matter which position you're in. You could be the highest person in an organization, I think you should always seek mentors that are going to challenge you, challenge the way that you think, challenge the way that you do certain things in your job, so that way you can ultimately grow. But yeah, those are a few tidbits that I have for you all.
Thank you, Milkin. I believe. Go ahead, Savannah.
All right, so yes, let's spill the tea. They say. So for me, when this is how I found out, it was through my advisors and counselors. So for me, throughout my college, so MC, I talked about the Board of Trustees scholarships. There's also a bunch of scholarships at a lot of community colleges. You have to go through their website and kind of go through which one kind of matches with you. Also applied for a lot of scholarships that I didn't get, but these are the ones that I was able to get. So I got senatorial scholarships and legislative scholarships. Please, a lot of people don't know about this, but I beg you, go put in your zip code, find your district. Your district is gonna have a senator and it's gonna have a legislator. Type their email and email them. I'm a student, I'm trying to get into college. This is where I am right now. Do you have any scholarships available? And you'd be surprised how much money is out there they're willing to give you. So, you know, just email them. They will send you an application. You just apply to those. Those are the two things that I applied to. And thank God I was able to get those. So those helped me out as well with the FAFSA. So it might be little, but trust me, it will all kind of add up together. I didn't get a full ride. It was just little by little, and it kind of all kind of ended up adding up together. The next thing is also the USG scholarships. That's very, very important. Apply every semester. Even if you don't get all of the semesters, please apply. Also, there was the 2+2 transfer scholarship. So there is actually a scholarship out there for going from community college to a four-year university. It's called the 2+2 transfer scholarships. And that helped a lot. I found out about it a little bit later, but I was able to get past 2 years that I was at USG, and that also helped together with the legislative and then the senatorial scholarships and the FAFSA and a little bit all added up together. So if you were looking for how I got through yeah, it's through MD Caps. MD Caps have that kind of what is it called, scholarship. So it might be little by little, but that's how I was able to do it and be able to graduate debt free. So if you have any more, if I found out any more information, I think I had like a list of scholarships, I will definitely find that PDF and I'll send it to whoever I need to send it to, but it was really helpful for me. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Savannah, for sharing that with us. Yes, like she said, apply to as many scholarships as you can. Don't get tired. You can apply to as many as you want. Now I'm going to close up. I thank you to everyone, our panelists and students that joined today's event. Let's continue the conversation by joining the Trailblazers by clicking the link in the chat. I will now pass it back to Shelby for some final comments.
Thank you, Meredith. I also want to see if it would be possible if any of the panelists are able to stay a little bit later to answer any final questions. If some of you are able to hang by after the event, that was great. I hate to stifle conversation, but I do want to be you know, good for everyone's time. So before folks head out, again, you're welcome to stay a few minutes if you have a few questions. I'm going to put two things in the chat for you. The first is a list as our first gen landing page, which you may or may not have seen, that has more information, has additional resources, some other events that are going on around first gen that you may want to check out, and we'll also be posting some of the things we talked about today on that website as well. The second and perhaps most important is the survey about today's event. This is the second year we're doing this event. It is a new format, so we really want to hear your what you thought of this event and your experience that we'll be having at the so if you get a chance to fill it out. If not, I'll be sending a reminder also next week if you don't have time to fill it out now. Iris also posted in the chat the email address for the Trailblazers. So if you'd like to be involved with Meredith and Larissa and some of the other folks here at USG, please do reach out to that group. If you're not yet in USG, if you're a high school student or a MC student, you're just interested in connecting with the Trailblazers, I'm sure they'd also be more than happy to talk with you and share resources about that as well. And again, I think some of our panelists can stick by a little bit to answer some remaining questions. That would be great. Yeah, thank you so much all for coming today, for taking the time. Really appreciate everyone who shared their emotional stories, their very personal stories about their education. Hopefully some of you, learned something, learned some new resources that you can take forward in your education. As mentioned at the beginning, this is a celebratory event. This is really recognizing all the amazing things that first gen students at USG and hopefully upcoming students to USG, as well as alumni, have accomplished, and showing that you are not alone. You are as we've seen from the chat this entire time, and everyone's saying, yes, that's me. Yes, you stole that right out of my brain. There are lots of other people who are going through the same things that you are going through. You're not alone. Please find those mentors, find those peers, find those resources, and we're here to help you out in any way we can. So it's the official closing, but again, some folks will stick around if you have additional questions or comments.